Welcome to this video about biodiversity in the city. When it comes to biodiversity in the city, it is usually only on our own terms. For example, we prepare facilities for birds, bees and swifts to nest where we want them to nest. We have all kinds of pots for plants to grow where we want them to grow and manipulate them so that they will grow on roofs or terraces or buildings. Doing this without considering what the ecological consequences are for these kinds of plants, animals and other organisms. For clarity, I want to state that biodiversity is not a functional decoration with planting within strict boundaries. It is also not a candy store of all kinds of pet animals we like, which we can pick and choose. It is not just seed mixtures for all kinds of pollinators as a kind of fast food provider. And we can't say that if we plant 100 trees that we have planted a forest. No, it's just 100 plain planted trees. A forest is completely different from a set of trees. We can't plan biodiversity. It's not only above the ground, and it is certainly not neat. Pimping the environment by hedge trimming and only attracting pet animals and placing beautiful looking plants is ecologically unsound and spoils by reversing patterns. Actually, it pretends that the circumstances are better than they are in fact. But this is biodiversity. Biodiversity is autonomous, spontaneous, often hidden, and most of it is unknown. It's often undervalued, neglected, or even plainly disliked or disgusted. And biodiversity creeps, itches, and is for large quantities in the soil below ground level. This is where we can find the basis of biodiversity. Biodiversity is variation in genetic composition and variation which may enable evolution, also in the urban circumstances, like the different types of blackbirds we see in the cities. Biodiversity is also species diversity, but only those species which occur autonomously and spontaneously. And if we talk about species diversity, we are talking about insects, other invertebrates and fungi. About 80% of all biodiversity is fungi and insects, and only a very minor part of biodiversity life is composed of vertebrates. And if we look at biomass, plants and bacteria comprise almost 85% of all biomass. So talking about biodiversity is not only about birds and mammals, but it is also talking about the small, the ugly and the green ones. Biodiversity is also about habitats and context they are formed in. In the city, we can have the stony city, the inner city, the rough city and the green city as major elements. And this picture shows you all kinds of different urban habitats you can encounter in at least the northwest European cities. And biodiversity is also ecological functional biodiversity and interactions. And that means that we have to go to the soil. If you look at the vegetation on the left picture, you see flowers and grass and all kinds of plant life. And if you go below the surface, then you see a lot of different root systems or root types. That means that also below the soil there is a partitioning of habitats which enables more organisms to grow and flourish. And in the soil, you also have a kind of gradient from surface to the lower parts of the soil. In the soil, but also above the soil, you have a lot of functions, interactions and a very complicated and intricate soil food web with all kinds of organisms. You have the time development, the maturing of the soil, and you have the connections between the root systems of the trees, the plants and the mycorrhizal fungi. We also have to look at all kinds of scales in space and time when it comes to biodiversity. In time, there are biotic processes which take only seconds or minutes, but also the development of vegetation and the succession of plant life and soil life takes decennia and centuries of time. This means we can disrupt a couple of centuries of the ecological development in one afternoon. And in terms of spatial scale, we are looking at square millimeters to hectares or square kilometers of cities and interconnected metropolitan areas. Thank you for your attention.